Okay,
Yes.
so I'd just like to start by quickly acknowledging that I'm speaking on the Wurundjeri lands of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, acknowledging that sovereignty was never ceded. Okay, I'm Clare Keogh. I was diagnosed with Agenesis of Corpus Callosum and Dandy-Walker syndrome before I was born. So I'm ACC plus, I guess you could say. I was also diagnosed as autistic last year. I love reading, writing, music, especially singing, animals, especially dogs and horses, and I love experiencing different foods too. I'm the oldest of 4, and I have a number of close friends, though that's been a long process. I am very sensitive, usually experiencing emotions in big ways, and I really like routines. I'm a paediatric occupational therapist with a specific interest in working with neurodivergent children, children whose brains exist outside the norm in some way. Within this scope of practice, I'm particularly interested in the concepts of sensory modulation and emotional regulation and the associated strategies. My interest is formed from how my understanding of sensory processing and emotional regulation has helped me to understand myself, my past and my present. I want to make sure others can access that understanding, hopefully earlier than I did. As a baby, my parents were told to touch my opposite hand to my opposite foot to encourage my brain to build connections and to develop my coordination. I was a rather late crawler. I didn't show an interest in it until about 10 months and so walked late too. In fact, many motor skills were delayed to a degree. I only really learnt to ride a bike in my early teen years, and it's still very dependent on the environment. For example, I disliked team sports and athletics carnival across primary and secondary school, as I was always one of the slowest in my year and last to be picked for teams. In contrast, I was an early talker. I could say quite a number of words by the time I was 18 months. I have a slightly unusual way of talking. I've always found it hard to plan a full sentence before speaking it. I'll know the general idea, but am only able to find the exact words as I go. I also can hop from one idea to another quite fast, which I'm told can be confusing. However, it's my natural way of speaking. I have to concentrate very hard and speak very slowly if I try to change it. It's different when I'm giving a prepared speech like this one. When I'm writing a prepared speech and speaking it, I have a backspace button and can pace myself with paragraphs. As a preschooler, I attended an early learners music program and kinder gym, gymnastics for little kids, as well as having a small amount of physio and occupational therapy. I also had frequent visits to a paediatrician until I was about 13 to check my development. It was this paediatrician who advised my parents that because I could pass as normal well enough at primary, they should be mindful of who they informed about my disabilities. After all, according to that paediatrician, they wouldn't want anyone to label me as less than capable. This well-meaning, though misguided advice had consequences later on. Looking back, I can see that I struggled with things like emotional regulation, socializing, and sensory processing issues like noise sensitivity and auditory processing delay growing up. In primary school, these difficulties and my lack of physical skills fed into one another to easily mark me as different, despite having no official labels on the school records. For example, I was always more interested in hanging out with the teachers or the younger kids than I was in playing with others my own age. The teachers made time for me, and the little kids found me interesting. In contrast, the social environment of the kids my age was confusing and overwhelming, and I struggled to find friends. I think I sometimes felt both older and younger than my peers. Their attitudes and games often seemed illogical or boring. Friendship was hard. I tended to latch on to one or two others and try to stick to them. If someone new came to school, I'd try to latch onto them before anyone else convinced them I shouldn't be bothered with. Sometimes this worked, often it didn't. Unfortunately, I was horrendously bullied at various points across upper primary and lower secondary, and socially ostracised across most of my schooling to some degree or another. The bullies didn't know to call me disabled, but that didn't stop them calling me nerd, weak, or the R word. Fortunately, in some respects, my lack of social nuance prevented me from taking their words too much to heart, even as it prevented me from fitting in. I've always been caught between being a little envious that others found it so easy and somewhat incredulous, I guess, that me being me, quirks and all, is seen as the outlier, the downside. From primary school onwards, I've wondered why I had to be the one to change in order to be an acceptable friend or even person to the majority of my peers. In primary, I could be found most lunchtimes reading in the sun on a bench next to the old school hall, or else walking around the playground, telling stories to myself. I've always done this, apparently. Even as a toddler, I'd stand up, clutching the bars of my cot, and entertain myself by telling myself stories when I should have been sleeping. It was a comfort to me then, and continues to be one now. Usually the story I'm telling is some fan fiction based on whatever fandom is occupying my attention at that moment in time. Occasionally it's original fiction. When I'm anxious or upset, it's calming. When I have nothing else to do, it provides a fun occupation to escape into my imagination. As a kid, when I was riding with the Saddle Club on my imaginary horse, I wasn't alone. My books and my stories are always there for me, but they have also been the gateway into several friendships, because what works for me in friendship is friendships focused on my interests. While I've struggled over the years to distinguish between friend and acquaintance, when my passions are the focus, true friendships happen naturally. I do best with a core group of close friends I can confide in, and my advice is to surround yourself with people who know you for who you really are. You will find your people that way. I even found my partner by focusing on my interests. One of my major friendships as a child centered on our love of books. We'd sit on the bench in the playground and read and talk. I wanted to be an author when I grew up, and reading stories helped me think about what sort of books I wanted to write. It was this friend who showed me how to stand up for myself against bullies, actually, because she was targeted too. I've always had a terrible time when faced with conflict of any sort, which bullies have always taken advantage of. When I'm in a highly emotional situation, my brain becomes like a manual car when you try to press the accelerator and the clutch at the same time. A whole lot of revving, but nothing happens. The end result of that is nearly always a loss of verbal coherence, dissolving into tears, and, if possible as a kid, running the heck away from the situation. Emotional dysregulation for me can also be triggered by a change in routine or a sudden change in plans. If I haven't had time to prepare for the change, I don't understand it. It feels wrong, almost unfair, and expecting me to understand why the change had to happen while I'm still processing that it's occurred can be too much sometimes. I usually need time and space to process it, often verbally, before I move on. It made me an easy target because it wouldn't be until my late teens that I'd begin to find, with professional help, effective self-regulation strategies to disengage the clutch, so to speak. I wish I'd had access to it sooner, which is why I'm passionate about sensory and emotional regulation for children. Without those strategies as a kid, it helped to see my friend in a similar sort of situation, dealing with it. I still remember the way my friend stood up to the bully and how, a little while later, I was able to use her example to stand up for myself and watch me stumble as a result. Best feeling ever. In high school, the social problems continued, but I was better able to find people who were at least friendly with me, so I had someone to sit next to in class. I moved between the outer edges of various friendship groups over the years in this way. I also gathered a few closer friends around me who I'd sit with at lunchtimes, and I expressed myself through performing in school musicals or choir. My imaginary horse riding turned into battles with sticks as wands or lightsabers against invisible enemies, with a created cast of characters at my back, sometimes from the original fiction, others entirely of my own creation. In Year 9, I taught myself to touch type by accident because I wanted to type up a story I'd handwritten during Year 8, and lunchtimes were only 50 minutes long. 10 to 15 minutes of that was spent gobbling down a sandwich or two with my friends before all of us headed into the library. I'd make a beeline for the computers and begin transcribing my work. There had been previous attempts to teach me touch typing, as I'd been assessed by an occupational therapist as having very slow handwriting. These attempts hadn't worked because they'd focused too much on the mechanics. They'd been too boring and fiddly. However, once I had sufficient motivation, boom. By the end of Year 10, not only had I finished typing up my story and was trying to decide whether to edit it or plan its sequel, not to mention writing up lots of fan fiction, but I had learnt to type without looking at the keyboard, much anyway. I'm actually quite a fast typist now. This is probably the first example of what a uni coordinator would later call OTing myself, using occupational therapy strategies to help me achieve what I needed to do. Being a touch typist was really good because it meant that I got to use a laptop in all of my tests and exams. While this did get me a few snide glances from my peers, I was learning to explain and therefore advocate for myself by this point. Also, my major bully of my early high school years had been identified and disciplined in Year 8 and then separated from me deliberately in Year 9. So by the time we crossed paths again, I was a lot more comfortable in pushing back or just ignoring her. Most of my classmates didn't have a problem with my extra arrangements. Another thing that's helped me in schooling and uni has been having extra time for tests and knowing there were staff I could turn to support me as needed, whether that was a specific teacher or counsellor at school, or course coordinator or disability support advisor at uni. Also, making a time during each week to specifically plan my timetable for the week ahead and organise and review my notes from the week just gone, and which is another OTing myself moment with the schedules. Then there are things I've learned in my last years at uni or since graduating that I really wish I could have known earlier, like how to use routines, schedules, and alarms to do chores in an appropriate time frame instead of just meaning to do them. Also, I've realised that I can be a bit demand avoidant when I need to do something I don't like or when something unexpected and unpleasant is happening, especially if it involves what other people think of me. The way around that is to find some way of making it motivating or acknowledging my feelings, figuring out why I'm avoiding a thing this time, and then working around it. Sometimes the only thing to do is just schedule it in and make myself do it, but I'll focus better if I know why. Understanding those parts of my neurology would have made my later teen years easier. They were full of increasing frustration for me, as my analytical brain tried desperately to figure out why I found some things so dratted difficult. Dandy Walker syndrome, the disability of mind that I understood the most, was supposed to be mainly about movement and coordination. I didn't know how it could affect my executive functioning, let alone the effects of my ACC or my then undiagnosed autism. This is where I think the paediatrician's advice was wrong, because downplaying my disabilities meant that I didn't have a full explanation for my struggles. We have to do better, because kids and adults deserve to understand our full identities, including our disabilities. It's going to affect us across our lives, so why not name it and reclaim it? The relief of finally beginning to understand myself as an adult, thanks to my studies, job, and connecting with disability communities on social media, cannot be understated. I've learned OT-related strategies for regulating myself that, while I wish I could have known at a younger age, are still really useful now. For example, despite being an extrovert, I really need downtime after activities as I get drained. I currently work part-time, and I can't see myself going full-time in the future because I need space to process everything. If I worked full-time, I wouldn't be able to have a social life or participate in some of the other things that keep me happy. Second has been the importance of understanding my sensory experience and supporting it so that I'm regulated and happy. I bought a pair of noise-cancelling headphones last year, and these have changed my life. With their help, I can filter noise out and reduce the amount of auditory information my brain has to process. They don't deafen me completely, so the fact that I can listen to music through them is another bonus. They make so many things so much easier, and I wish I had been given ear defenders as a 5-year-old, which explains why I love trialing them so much with kids at work when they show similar noise sensitivity. I also better appreciate how going for walks or doing some heavy work like lifting weights really settles me, and how I can use deep pressure to do the same. Thank you, weighted blanket. Last, I've learnt the benefits of using professional support through psychologists, other occupational therapists, and speech pathologists to support my needs. They build my confidence and suggest strategies like how to communicate my needs when I'm in a state of overwhelm, how to have effective interpersonal relationships, completing an adult sensory profile assessment, and support in learning how to drive. The idea of me in the driver's seat was intimidating for quite a long time. At one stage, I thought I would never get behind the wheel. I've had my learner's permit since I was 18, but I only really began making progress on it in the past couple of years. Consistent practice with the right guidance was the key to confidence. Who knew, right? The big difference has been having the support of a specialised driving instructor and occupational therapist driving assessor. With their guidance, I've improved a lot, and I am looking forward to going for my automatic licence at some point in the next few months once restrictions are eased enough for tests to resume. Looking forward, I'll continue to develop my own understanding of who I am and how I function in the world. I actually keep my own notes about my challenges and strategies as a way of understanding myself, a sort of guide to being me. I hope to keep combining my lived experience with my occupational therapy knowledge to assist neurodivergent children to access the opportunities I've had and wished I had, and doing my bit, perhaps through more events like this, to work towards a better future where disabled people are supported and included wherever we are and whatever we do. Thank you. That's me.
Thank you, Claire. Gosh, that was amazing. I love name it and reclaim it. I think we're going to put that somewhere and quote you. I would say there have been an amazing amount of comments come through the chat. It just all in support and of what you're saying in recognition and understanding, and it's been amazing. But I will pass over to Michael because that's that's his stuff. So he will take over.
Yeah, lots of comments about how valuable the lived experience is, which I would agree with. Have you had a sensory processing assessment?
Yes.
And what do you use it for, and how valuable was it?
Okay, so I had a sensory profile assessment done at the start of this year, actually. And I should say I had a general, we did kind of do mock-ups at uni, so I had a general idea before that, but yeah, I had an official one done at the start of this year, and it shows that basically I concentrate better if I do it in certain tasks, if I do a bit of movement first. And so the noise sensitivity, yeah, it showed, I used it basically to kind of as a basis for further understanding how to adapt my sensory environment, and so that I can feel more regulated, and more, which means like feeling calm and having less moments of overwhelm. Did I answer that?
Yeah, that sounds great. Do you have any therapies that you recommend from an OT perspective for people with ACC?
Well, I mean, what I recommend is finding an occupational therapist who specializes in disabilities and paediatrics if it's for a kid, or like just general disabilities if you're looking at it for an adult, and talking about it with them, because like I could think of a few things perhaps, but every person's going to be different. So
yeah,
and every situation's different and all of that. So yeah.
Okay. No, that's fair enough. It's very individualized thing. If you could give your 13-year-old self one bit of advice, what would it be?
Oh, that's a question. I'm not sure. I think it would be well, I'm not sure, but it would be something about like well, kind of a reminder that kind of a little bit what I said in the talk about how
Yep.
Like recognizing the things that I find difficulty with and my strengths or whatever are part of me, and none of the people who say otherwise, the bullies or whatever, don't matter. And also the importance of really finding your people through finding your interests.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice, I think. Can you describe any self-regulation strategies, how they've helped you, and how you use them?
Well, so I mentioned walking movement before. So I now I didn't realize this before the lockdown, like the first lockdown and that, but I'm someone that when I'm at my job, I am moving around quite a lot of the day. And what I didn't realize until we were prevented from doing that by the first lockdown is if I don't get that sort of movement, my mental health suffers, because it's just like I feel more anxious. I just like, it's not even quite identifiable exactly as just kind of feeling off. So I now, with this lockdown and everything, I go for a walk, a half an hour walk each day or most days. The other thing that is both, is that emotional? Anyway, the other thing that is routines and knowing what, like, knowing when things are happening as well. That keeps me regulated, and even creating. So I've created my own kind of routine. Hold on. I don't know if you can really read it there, but it's just kind of example of like, I've created my own little task, like kind of list for the day sort of thing, so that I feel a little bit, like, it helps me kind of remind myself to do things, or to just kind of feel settled about how the day's going.
Can you talk a bit more about singing and how that helps you and how you use that as a tool?
Okay, so singing is one of my big passions, and I've always loved to sing, like right from when I was quite little. I suppose there's a story that like one of my first show and tell things at Kinder was like it was me singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or something like that, and I find it just really enjoyable. And so there's also some interesting research. I couldn't quote exactly off the top of my head, but there's some interesting research or things being done to suggest that music is really regulating. So listening to specific types of music with particular rhythms of, I think it's 50 to 70 beats a minute, particularly for calming, or just general like regular beats can be really regulating, because with neurological or whatever, like neurodevelopmental disabilities, one of the things can be is kind of our brains are just a bit out of sync. So having an external rhythm through music can really be useful.
Yeah.
And for me, the singing, well, actually so it's through singing that I've found my people and my friends, and that as an adult, when I joined the choir at uni, I joined it because I loved singing, and it was through there that I found people who understood me and who were willing to accept me in ways that, like I described in the talk, it hasn't really been common for me. So that's what I meant by finding your own interests. Like for someone else, it might not be singing, it might be swimming or horse riding, or I don't know why I'm thinking of physical stuff, but cooking. But finding focusing on what really makes you happy, and then you'll find a community somewhere that like gets you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people in the community that would attest to the value of music and music therapy, and also engaging in a hobby that can be social, so you can have a connection with somebody and have something to talk to them about, and that helps the social skills and all that sort of thing. When you talk about making your own stories as a way of coping in boredom and stuff like that, it sounds like a maladaptive daydreaming disorder, and I'm wondering if you've heard of that.
Nope.
I have it myself. I have ACC as well. It's quite varied thing. Some people find it helpful and don't find it a disorder as such, and some people find it very addictive and destructive to their life. And the way you described it was positive, and it sounds very similar to other people that describe it in a positive way, who are very creative people and try to write stories about what they, these stories that they come up with. So it might be something that you could look into if you're interested.
I do, yeah.
Eli Summer is the professor that has done most of the research on that, and heads a international research consortium on it, and defined the term.
I'll have to look into that. Yeah.
Are you taking any new clients?
Well, I don't know. So I sort of be and just paediatrics clients, and I do have a I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about work stuff, but I do have an email address that a work email that I can pop into the chat. So I'm Melbourne based, so sorry.
Happy to share, as we are with the others who are going to send us things through and send out information to all the attendants after. I'm happy to pop your information in there as well. If we're going to link people to other research, then it's certainly not a bad thing to plug your own work as well. You shared so much of yourself in here today, so
good. I thought I read something, but anyway, and we can certainly chat. I'm a relatively new grad, so it's and I've been doing work at a specialist school in Melbourne so far, so that's my main primary employment, but we can certainly chat and see if you're interested in something for your child about that, because I am really keen on the idea of being being in that professional relationship where I'm known as someone who has some lived experience as well as my professional experience. So
if you want to do that, we'll put that in the information that will go out with the rest of the stuff relating to this session. And you're Melbourne based, is that right? So there's a lot of our community in Melbourne that will be interested in that. So
beautiful. Unless anything else has come through.
I think that's it.
Okay.
One thing I did notice that were a couple of people, just a second, wanted to see this guy. So
yes.
So that is the family dog, and he lives with my parents and the rest of my family in my hometown. But of course, since with the lockdowns and everything, haven't been able to see him. So he's been my Zoom background since March. I love dogs, and I'm very much looking forward to. We can't have a dog in our current place, but I'm very much looking forward to moving and hopefully getting a dog.
I'm just going to finish up with everyone, okay?
In the nearish future. So, yes. Yeah, that's me.
Oh, unmute. Thank you so much, Claire, for coming in and sharing so much of your story today. I know that it resonated with a lot of people here, and I know that as a parent, I take something out of your story, take lots away, lots to chew on, lots to think about. And again, that quote, what did you say? Name it and reclaim it. Will retrieve.
Oh, sorry. I was just sorry. I interrupted you. That
You.
Yeah. Well, I actually, yes, that's awesome. I got the.
Matilda,
It's freezing up a little bit there, Peter. But there's a number of other disability activists and advocates that I've drawn influence from through those to develop that understanding, such as Carly Findlay and the late Stella Young. So I hope that phrase is mine, but but the concept behind it is not.